Roses don't ask permission to bloom. There's something they never tell you about roses that push through concrete. They don't bloom quietly. They don't tiptoe around the pavement whispering apologies for taking up space. No, they crack the ground wide open. They split it. They announce themselves with thorns sharp enough to draw blood and petals soft enough to make you weep. And a fragrance that says, I survived this. And I'm still beautiful. I want to talk to you today about what we're really made of when the world tries to bury us. And I want to start by introducing you to someone who embodies this truth in every breath she takes. Her name is Mimi P. And when I sat down with her on the Soft Girl Era podcast, she said something that stopped me cold. She said, Roy Tiksha, when a rose rises out of the concrete jungle, you have no idea what she's made of. I have always seen this version of me living out the manifestation of a little brown girl from Bed-Stuy. Now, what Mimi P isn't just sharing words, she's sharing prophecy. She's a force who has dedicated her life to empowering Black women, Black professionals, Black leaders, Black entrepreneurs to reclaim their vision, their power, and their right to bloom exactly where they were planted. Her work reminds us that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving so loudly that the concrete itself has no choice but to crack beneath you. And that's not poetry. That's a declaration of war against every system, every neighborhood, every voice that ever told you to stay small. Because here's the thing about concrete jungles, whether it's Bed-Stuy, South Central, the Delta, or any hood that tried to bury you, they don't account for vision. They don't account for the little brown girl who sees herself thriving before she even has the language to name it. They don't account for resilience that runs so deep it becomes your DNA. Mimi P shared three truths with us that I need you to tattoo on your soul. First, resilience is your superpower. Like a rose pushing through concrete, every Black girl from any tough neighborhood carries unbreakable strength forged in adversity. Second, vision yourself into existence. She always saw this successful version of herself, and manifesting it meant holding that image no matter what tried to dim it. Third, rise and give back. Your concrete jungle roots don't just fuel survival, they fuel thriving, and they fuel lifting your community yet higher. Now, I know some of you are thinking, that sounds good, LeAnne, but what does that actually look like? So let me take you on a journey through three stories that prove what we're made of when we rise from the concrete. Let's start with a brother named Nipsey Hussle. Now, I know Nipsey was a man, but his story is our story because his family, his community, the women who stood beside him and carried his vision forward after he was gone, they're the roses we're talking about. Nipsey started selling mixtapes on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson as a teenager. That intersection was a war zone, violence and poverty grinding people down daily. Gunshots were the neighborhood soundtrack. Despair was the air people breathed. But Nipsey saw something else. He saw ownership, he saw education, he saw a blueprint for Black economic empowerment that didn't require leaving the hood, it required transforming it. So he invested, he opened the Marathon clothing store right there on that same block where he used to hustle. He funded education programs. He rallied thousands of people to sign petitions to rename that street Nipsey Hussle Square. And when he was murdered, when violence tried to have the final word, his family refused to let that vision die. Led by his brother Black Sam and supported by leaders like LA City Council, President Marquise Harris Dawson, they built community hubs for shopping, foundation work, groceries. They created space where discipline and ownership weren't just buzzwords. They were daily practice. They were survival. They were revolution. That's what it means to rise from concrete. Nipsey didn't escape the jungle. He planted a garden in it. And now Generations of young people walk past Nipsey Hussle Square and see proof that you can bloom exactly where you were planted, thorns and all. Then there's Oprah. And I know we've heard Oprah's story 1,000 times, but have you really heard it? Have you sat with the fact that this woman was born into rural Mississippi poverty, that she was molested as a child, that the world told her in every possible way through racism, through abuse, through a society designed to crush Black girls, that she didn't matter? The concrete jungle isn't always literal pavement. Sometimes it's the suffocating weight of a world that wants you to stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible. But Oprah had vision. She saw herself on television before she had a television. Let that sink in. She saw it. She held that image in her mind like a lifeline. She excelled in school. She grabbed every scholarship, every radio gig, every local TV opportunity. And she did it with raw authenticity. She didn't code switch her way to success. She brought her whole self, her trauma, her faith, her Blackness. And she said, "This is who I am. Take it or leave it." And the world took it. She built a $1 billion empire. She became the first Black female billionaire. She launched OWN Network. She created a book club that turned unknown authors into bestsellers. She built a leadership academy for girls in South Africa. Oprah didn't just rise, she created an entire ecosystem of rising for other people. That's the manifestation Mimi P was talking about. That's what happens when a little brown girl refuses to let the concrete define her. And if we're talking about concrete crushing, empire building, well, let's talk about Madam CJ Walker. Born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 in Louisiana's Delta, orphaned by 7, married by 14, widowed by 20, with a daughter to raise. She washed clothes for $1.50 a day in a Jim Crow South that told Black women they were worth less than nothing. But Sarah had a problem. She was losing her hair from stress and poor nutrition, and she couldn't afford the products that might help. So she made her own. She experimented. She prayed. She visualized wealth and freedom in an era when both were supposed to be impossible for someone who looked like her. And she created a line of hair care products that worked. Then she did something revolutionary. She didn't just sell products, she trained Black women to sell them too. She built an army of saleswomen in giving them economic independence in an era when that was supposed to be a fantasy, when Black women were supposed to accept scraps. Madam C.J. Walker became America's first self made female millionaire. She built factories, salons, a network that employed thousands. She funded civil rights organizations. She lived lavishly and gave generously. She proved that the concrete jungle doesn't get the final say. Vision does. Now, here's where it gets personal for all of us listening, because these aren't just history lessons, these are mirrors. Mimi P's words on the Soft Girl Era podcast weren't just about her journey from Bed-Stuy, they were about every single one of us who's been underestimated, overlooked, and told we don't belong in the rooms we're destined to own. You see, the Soft Girl Era isn't about going soft in your ambition. It's about releasing the cape, the one that says you have to be superwoman every single day, grinding until you break. It's about redefining strength so that rest isn't weakness, boundaries aren't selfish, and softness isn't surrender. It's about learning to be soft in a world that taught you survival. And that's the hardest, bravest work there is. Mimi P told us to challenge ourselves daily. Visualize your roles rising. Write down that version of success you saw as a little girl, the one that felt impossible but wouldn't leave you alone. Then take one bold step today. Pitch that idea. Mentor a kid from the block. Say no to something that drains you and yes to something that fills you. No excuses. Manifest it. And she wants you to feel empowered and unshakable, fired up like you've got concrete crushing roots, ready to bloom no matter the jungle. Because you do. You absolutely do. I think about the women listening right now, the ones who are 38, 45, 52, who've spent decades leading teams, raising families, holding down households, carrying communities. You're exhausted. You've been in survival mode so long, you forgot what thriving feels like. But here's the truth: you're not too old to bloom. You're not too tired to rise. You're not too far gone to reclaim softness, joy, rest, and radical self love. The concrete jungle tried to bury you, but it didn't know you were a seed. Nipsey Hussle's family didn't let violence have the last word. Oprah didn't let poverty and abuse define her ceiling. Madam C.J. Walker didn't let Jim Crow tell her what she was worth. And Mimi P didn't let Bed-Stuy limit her vision. They all rose, they all cracked the pavement, they all bloomed with thorns and petals and a fragrance that said, I am here, I am powerful, and I am not apologizing. So here's what I need you to do today, right now. After you finish listening to this, I need you to write down one thing, one vision you've been holding that feels too big, too bold, too impossible. Write it down, say it out loud, tell somebody who believes in you, and then take one step, just one, toward making it real. Maybe it's setting a boundary with someone who's been draining your energy for years. Maybe it's starting that business you've been dreaming about since you were a little brown girl with big ideas. Maybe it's simply resting without guilt, without explanation, without apology. Because the soft girl era, the one Mimi P and I are inviting you into, isn't about doing less. It's about being more, more authentic, more whole, more soft, more you. And when you rise, when you crack that concrete and bloom in full color, you're not just changing your life, you're changing the lives of every little brown girl who's watching, who's wondering if she can make it, who's holding a vision she's afraid to name. You're the proof. You're the rose. You're the manifestation. The concrete jungle tried to bury you. But here's the punchline it never saw coming. You weren't buried, you were planted. And now it's time to bloom so fiercely, so unapologetically, so beautifully that the world has no choice but to stop and take notice. Rise, sis. The concrete doesn't stand a chance.